Mary Smith, 41st Ohio Infantry, joined to avenge the death of only brother at Bull Run, discovered because of the manner in which she twisted her dishcloth.
14th Iowa Infantry. Unknown female soldier shot herself when her sex was discovered in April 1863.
Unknown soldier. Discovered when she tried to put her pants on over her head.
Ohio Infantry. Sergeant gave birth after 20 months of service and sent home.
Virginia Regiment. Mary and Molly Bell arrested and accused of prostitution, then served 2 years in prison. When released, they were sent home in uniform.
Women soldiers were so determined to stay in the Army and to serve their country at all costs that not only did they go to extraordinary lengths to disguise themselves and pretend to be men, but if their disguise fell through and they were discovered and ejected from one regiment, a fair number of them simply packed up their things, moved to another town, and simply re-enlisted.
Length of service for a woman soldier was 16 months.
Probably the oldest female to enlist in either army in the war was Lucy Matilda Thompson. She enlisted at the age of 49, which would have been an older age for a gentleman as well. She will be wounded by a piece of shrapnel that's going to tear her scalp open. 7 days battle, she will receive a very serious injury from shrapnel. She will have a portion of her skull actually torn away. Her husband was killed in the same action where she received this almost mortal wound. Lucy does not return to the field after this, but she will give birth to her first child at the age of 51. She will marry again later in the war, give birth to twins in 1855, have 6 children, the last one at the age of 68. She will live to the ripe old age of 112 years old, dying in 1925, after being somewhat involved in the First World War.
Nobody knows exactly how many women did this and how successful they were. Madeline Moore reportedly joined the Army to be with her boyfriend and was elected lieutenant. She served in West Virginia under McClellan and later at Bull Run. Mrs. Turchin went to war with her husband, General John B. Turchin. When he was taken ill in 1862, Mrs. Turchin took command of the regiment. Frances Clayton served in a Missouri cavalry regiment for 2 years and was never discovered. Usually, if a woman wished to stay in the Army, she had to switch regiments to avoid detection. Annie Lillibridge swapped a discharge with another soldier to re-enlist. Fanny Wilson was discovered near Vicksburg, went home, and worked as a ballerina before signing up again in the 3rd Illinois Cavalry. Frances Hook pleaded with tears in her eyes to be allowed to stay and fight after she recovered from her wounds, but she was left behind. She re-enlisted as Frank Martin in the 8th Michigan Infantry. Then she was discovered by a man who was raised in the same town as herself. The record for this sort of regiment hopping is held by Elizabeth Compton.
Lizzie Compton served in 7 different regiments during the course of the war. Her military career shows that she was perhaps the most determined and stubborn of all the women soldiers. She was removed from a regiment one time after she was wounded at the Battle of Fredericksburg. She was discovered to be a woman in yet another enlistment after she was wounded on the field at Green River in the Western Campaign. At another point in her career, she was detected in Rochester trying to enlist. She was mustered out of yet another regiment when she was thrown from a horse. Finally, in one of the last regiments she served in, it was the comrades she was serving with who figured out that Jack was actually a girl. And they said, okay, you have to stay behind and go work in the hospital. And Lizzie actually said she'd rather die than put on a skirt. And soon enough, she was detected yet again in yet another regiment. By the time the war was over, Lizzie Compton was barely 18 years old, had 7 regiments to her credit, and then she vanishes from the historical record. We have no idea what happened to her. All we know is that she was determined to wear nothing but Uncle Sam's uniform. How many women soldiers were killed in battle, their bodies hastily buried, and their sex never detected.
Especially toward the end of the war, the Confederate Army was taking anyone they could get. There are records of women who fought knowingly as women, even by the opposite side, but they fought and were allowed to fight because there were so few soldiers left in the South.
As more evidence comes to light, it actually appears that common soldiers, their comrades in arms in the ranks, many times and very often were aware of the fact that there were women in the ranks along with them. Letters have come to light that talk about the attributes of these women soldiers, saying that for the most part, they march and fight and shoot as well, some better than the men. They write about the attitudes that some of the soldiers had about them. Some of the letters say, some of us encourage these women soldiers, and others, frankly, don't like them being here.
Jim, we had 4 more new female recruits dressed up in men's clothes. They had just gotten their uniforms and they didn't know how to dress right. This gave them away. Those that we do have in the regiment are brave gals, and nobody messes with them.
Several of the soldiers with me on picket are women. They're all good soldiers and take their share of the duty, and they're also fair shots, too. The sergeant knows about them, but as long as he says nothing to the lieutenant, everything will be all right for them. The danger that we face daily makes us all work well together.
We had a prisoner that was worth more than all we'd ever taken. Said prisoner is a nice, smart, shrewd, little woman. She's as good a soldier as we've ever come across. Her comrades run, and she stood, and didn't appear to care for bullets.
Dear Mother, you will not be surprised to learn that we have several women soldiers with us here. One of them, Miss Main, is well known to you as she is from our village. They appear to be as good soldiers as the boys, and nobody dares tell the officers, for they would all be sent home in disgrace. One must give them credit, for we men risk only our lives in this effort, but the fairer sex risks both life and reputation. I will say that the fair hand is a steady one, for several of these women warriors are the best shots in their companies. These women stand the marches as well, if not better, than the boys. To avoid detection and expulsion, many of these women are forced to practice vile male habits such as smoking, swearing, and card playing. Edward Matheny.
Dear Father, I saw 3 or 4 dead rebel women soldiers in the heap of dead bodies. One Sessish woman charged within several rods of our works waving the traitor flag and was screaming vulgarities at us. She was shot 3 times, but still, on she came. When she ran out of ammunition, she pulled out the largest pig sticker I ever seen. When the corporal tried to shoot her, she kicked him in the face, smashing it quite severely. The she-devil stabbed 3 boys and was about to decapitate a 4th when the lieutenant killed her. No doubt, this gal inflicted more damage to our line than any other Reb.